Welcome to The Explainer. Listen, if you've been feeling this overwhelming sense of digital burnout lately, or like your attention span is just shrinking by the day, I want to start by validating exactly where you are right now. Seriously, there is absolutely no judgment here. I mean, only about 15% of people usually make it to the end of an explainer like this. Actually, data shows the average person decides whether to just completely abandon a video in less time than it takes to tie a shoe. We are constantly hunting for that next fresh dopamine hit. So if you're feeling that restless itch to check your phone right now, or you find it literally impossible to just sit and think, well, you are not alone. Our brains are in the middle of a massive rewiring. So let's dive into the mechanics of what's actually happening inside our heads.
It's kind of a heavy question, but I really want you to ask yourself honestly. Are you suffering from brain rot? Do you ever get that feeling that your whole sensory experience is being fed to you through a filter? You know, it's almost like you're physically in the room, but mentally completely elsewhere. You might feel like you're watching your own controls slowly slip away in slow motion, like you're just a passive observer in your own life while your thumb just endlessly scrolls.
If any of that resonated, let's go through a quick sort of medical checklist for our modern era, okay? Do you reach for your phone before you even brush your teeth in the morning? Are you clocking double-digit daily screen time? Does your anxiety suddenly spike when you don't feel that familiar rectangle right there in your pocket? Or, oh, how about this one? Do you have a total inability to sit and watch a movie without needing a second screen in your hand, right? A standard 2-hour film suddenly feels like this agonizing test of endurance without checking your feed. If you're checking these boxes, it just goes to show this is absolutely a collective condition we're all facing.
Which brings us to Section 1, the evolutionary mismatch.
You see, for hundreds of thousands of years, our brains evolved to do something very, very specific. And that's pay attention to what matters for survival. Our ancient ancestors literally needed massive spikes of dopamine to survive a rustling bush that might be hiding a saber-toothed tiger, or to remember the exact location of a really calorie-dense berry patch. It was a high-stakes game. Fast forward to today, and we still have the exact same basic brain architecture. But now, we're experiencing those same intense neurological spikes over a read receipt on a text message, or a string of likes on a photo. Basically, our ancient hardware is caught in this low-stakes, high-reward trap of doom scrolling. And right at the center of all this is neuroplasticity. That's your brain's incredible ability to adapt and physically rewire its own neural pathways based on environmental inputs. The brain operates on a strict use-it-or-lose-it economy. Now, in simpler times, this adaptability honed our survival skills. But in the smartphone era, our environment has changed at light speed. Because we're constantly task-switching, our brains are rapidly rewiring to crave constant fragmented novelty. It's selectively pruning the neural pathways required for deep, sustained focus, mostly because we simply aren't using them anymore.
All right, let's move on to Section 2, hacking the attention economy.
So get this. Today, over 5 billion people use the internet daily, and we're spending an average of over 6.5 hours looking at a screen. If you punch that into a calculator, humanity collectively spends over 4 million years per day consuming digital content. Just let that sink in for a second. 6.5 hours a day is roughly the equivalent of a full-time job. But instead of earning a paycheck, the currency you are paying out is your undivided focus. It is a staggering, mind-blowing capture of human attention.
And this brings us to a really crucial point established by the Canadian theorist Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message. Today's platforms are engineered from the absolute ground up for short bursts of attention. We're talking endless scrolling, autoplay, infinite vertical feeds. These platforms monetize your time, which means they reward user engagement above literally everything else. They honestly don't care if you're learning or just mindlessly swiping, as long as you stay on the app. So the real message we're receiving? It's not the funny meme or the dance video. The deeper message is the structural conditioning of our brains to expect immediate, effortless rewards all the time. So if you're struggling with this, remember, it's a structural trap of the medium itself, not some personal failing on your part.
This all builds into what psychologists call the slot machine effect. Think about the physical action of pulling down to refresh your favorite social media feed. That motion perfectly mimics pulling the physical lever of a casino slot machine. And it takes just a split second before those new posts or notifications load, right? Well, that delayed anticipation is actually a highly calculated move to trigger dopamine. Intermittent reinforcement hooks your brain by making every single swipe a literal gamble for the next hit. Sometimes you get nothing, sometimes you hit the jackpot with a viral post or a funny message from a friend. It really makes the abstract neuroscience feel incredibly tangible and, frankly, a bit sinister.
Now let's look at the fallout in Section 3, memory and cognitive debt.
Research suggests that our average attention span has plummeted from 2.5 minutes back in 2003 to a mere 47 seconds today. 47 seconds! That is barely enough time to read 3 standard paragraphs before your brain forcefully demands a new context. We are steadily losing the foundational ability to sustain a singular, complex thought. And because we can't focus, we're taking on what's called cognitive debt. This is the mental deficit created when we externalize tasks, things like problem solving and memory recollection, to search engines and AI. We're suffering from the Google effect. I mean, why would your brain spend the metabolic energy to encode deep, long-term memories when it knows the answer is always just one quick click away? A recent MIT study highlighted this perfectly. They found that students relying on generative AI to write essays had incredibly flat brain activity patterns during the process. Because they outsourced the heavy lifting of critical thinking, their brains processed the information so shallowly that they could barely even recall their own work just minutes later. Basically, our internal hard drives are failing because we're relying entirely on external ones.
In this cognitive debt, it bleeds directly into our culture, resulting in the actual erosion of language. We're seeing intellectually shallow internet slang and low-context viral vocabulary completely replace structured thought. Memes act as this sort of cultural shorthand. It's like intellectual popcorn, transmitted in seconds. While human language has historically built incredibly complex vocabularies to convey really fine shades of affection, grief, and nuance, today's endless feeds are replacing articulate expression with quick, monotonous emotional punches. A deeply nuanced feeling of irony or amusement is now entirely reduced to just a generic skull emoji. It severely weakens our ability to communicate and even fully process complex ideas.
But perhaps the most startling side effect of all this is anhedonia. This is the complete absence of enjoyment in the pursuit of happiness. And here's exactly how it happens. When your brain receives gratification at a constant, unnaturally fast rate through endless scrolling, your dopamine spikes repeatedly. Over time, your brain tries to balance this out by raising your baseline tolerance incredibly high, which eventually leads to a severe crash. Because your baseline is now elevated to expect constant digital fireworks, normal everyday life activities, like reading a physical book, taking a walk, or having a quiet conversation, they just feel dull and unrewarding. The everyday world simply can't compete with the algorithm, leaving you feeling entirely numb.
But there is hope. Section 4. Reclaiming your neural pathways.
Okay, the absolute best news here is that neuroplasticity works both ways. Just as your brain adapted to a high dopamine environment, it can heal. You can intentionally retrain your brain and build back your concentration. Think of your attention span exactly like a physical muscle. If you've been lying on the metaphorical couch of social media for years, going for a mental jog is definitely going to be uncomfortable at first. You'll feel that restless resistance for sure. But with consistent, intentional effort, those neural pathways will strengthen again. It is absolutely possible to regain your focus. So how do we reset that dopamine baseline? Start by grayscaling your phone's display in the accessibility settings. This instantly strips away the digital candy coating, turning those vibrant, addictive app icons into really boring gray squares. Next, lean into environmental design. Simply hide your device in another room when you need to focus, making distraction the path of most resistance. Out of sight truly is out of mind. Third, rebalance your dopamine by setting aside just 30 minutes a day with absolutely zero stimulation. No phone, no music, no explainer playing in the background. Just sit with your own thoughts. And finally, practice intentional reflection. At the end of the day, recap what happened or write down something specific you learned. This active recall forces your brain to actually encode information back into your long-term memory. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a challenge. When this ends, don't immediately click away. Resist the pull of the infinite scroll. Just sit quietly for 1 single minute. Let the information you just learned settle into your hippocampus. Ask yourself, what really resonated with me today? What is one small thing I can do differently tomorrow? This small act of silent, intentional reflection is exactly how you begin to fight brain rot. It's how you reclaim your neural real estate. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Now, put the phone down, and I'll see you next time.